The fork clattered against the porcelain plate, and every head in the dining room turned toward table 12. Maya Rodriguez didn't look up. Her hand remained steady on the water pitcher, her expression perfectly blank as she stood beside the man who had just spoken. Around them, the low murmur of the Celestine restaurant fell into complete silence. Crystal chandeliers cast fractured light across white tablecloths, and in that moment, 63 guests and 14 staff members held their breath. "I'm sorry," the man said louder now, his smile widening beneath salt and pepper hair perfectly styled. "Did I stutter? Say nothing and I'll leave right now. Your choice." Maya's fingers tightened almost imperceptibly around the pitcher handle. She was 28 years old, and she had been working at the Celestine for 6 years, long enough to recognize David Harrington without needing to read his name on a reservation list. Everyone in Chicago knew David Harrington. His face appeared on billboards downtown. His company owned half the commercial real estate in the Loop, and his charitable foundation made headlines every quarter. He was worth an estimated $2 billion, according to Forbes. He was also her daughter's father, though he had never met Emma, had never acknowledged her existence, and had paid exactly $47,000 over 5 years to ensure Maya would never speak his name in connection with their child. The silence stretched. Maya could feel her manager's eyes burning into her back from across the room. She could hear the soft creak of chairs as other diners shifted, uncomfortable, waiting to see what would happen next. Harrington sat flanked by 2 business associates, a thin woman in a charcoal suit and a younger man with nervous hands, both frozen mid-conversation, their water glasses halfway to their lips. "Maya." Her manager's voice cut through the air, careful and controlled. "Is there a problem?" She still didn't speak, didn't move. The water pitcher felt impossibly heavy. Harrington leaned back in his chair, spreading his hands in a gesture of bewildered innocence. "I was just making conversation. Asked our lovely waitress how her evening was going. Apparently that's offensive now." He glanced at his companions with a practiced expression of masculine exasperation. "You see what I have to deal with?" And they offered tight, uncertain smiles. But Maya knew what he'd actually said. She'd been refilling his water when he'd looked up at her, recognition flickering in his eyes for just a fraction of a second before being replaced by something colder, more calculated. He'd leaned in slightly, voice low enough that only she could hear. "Say nothing, and I'll leave right now. Make a scene, and you'll never work in this city again." Then he'd sat back and raised his voice for the room to hear. "I'm sorry, did I stutter? Say nothing, and I'll leave right now. Your choice." Twisting his threat into a joke, making her silence look like rudeness. Making himself the victim. Maya had learned many things in 6 years of luxury service. How to carry 4 plates at once without spilling. How to read a table's mood and know when to approach, when to disappear. How to smile through casual condescension, wandering hands, and customers who spoke to her as though she were furniture. But she had never learned how to swallow this particular humiliation, standing 3 feet from the man who'd promised her everything in the dim privacy of hotel rooms, who'd sworn he'd leave his wife, who'd wept when she told him she was pregnant, and then disappeared completely when she refused to take care of it. The $47,000 had come through a lawyer. Payments made in careful increments, each one accompanied by documents she'd been too desperate to fully read, too terrified to refuse. Her mother had been sick then. Emma had been 2 years old and needed speech therapy. Maya had been working 3 jobs, sleeping 4 hours a night, drowning. She'd signed, she'd taken the money, she'd promised silence, and now here he was, in her section, on a Tuesday night in February, playing games. "Maya!" Her manager again, closer now, his tone sharpening. Robert Chen had managed the Celestine for 12 years and had the kind of refined patience that could curdle into cutting precision when necessary. "You're needed in the kitchen." It was an order disguised as a request. Maya finally moved. setting the pitcher down on a nearby service station with deliberate care. She turned without looking at Harrington and walked toward the kitchen, her sensible work shoes silent on the thick carpet. She could feel every eye tracking her movement, could hear the rustle of whispers beginning to spread like fire through dry grass. The kitchen doors swung shut behind her, cutting off the dining room's carefully maintained ambiance and replacing it with the controlled chaos of dinner service. Line cooks calling orders, the sizzle of pans, the sharp scent of reduction sauces and fresh herbs. Maya kept walking, past the stainless steel stations, past the dishwashing area, straight into the narrow hallway that led to the employee restrooms and office. Her hands were shaking now. She pressed them flat against her thighs, trying to breathe, trying to think. Robert appeared in the hallway 30 seconds later, his expression unreadable. He was a small man, precise in his movements, with wire-rimmed glasses and the kind of controlled energy that came from managing chaos every night. "What just happened out there?" "Nothing. Maya, I need you to talk to me." She looked at him, this man who had promoted her from busser to server, who had given her the prime weekend shifts, who had written her a recommendation letter when she'd applied for a small business loan last year. Robert was fair, Robert was decent, but Robert also answered to owners who cared about reputation, about Yelp reviews, about keeping billionaires happy. "He's a customer," she said quietly. "I was refilling water. He made a comment. I didn't respond, that's all." "That's not all. The entire dining room heard him challenge you to speak. You stood there like a statue. Now everyone's talking, phones are coming out, and David Harrington is in there telling anyone who'll listen that his waitress just gave him the silent treatment for no reason." Robert pulled off his glasses, cleaning them with meticulous care. A habit Maya had learned meant he was thinking hard. "He's requesting a different server." "Fine. Maya, what's really going on?" She wanted to tell him, wanted to explain that the man in the dining room had been inside her once, had told her she was beautiful, had promised her a future, had abandoned her when she became inconvenient, had paid her to disappear and was now sitting in her section, at her job, in her life, treating the whole thing like a game. Instead, she said, "Can I take my break?" Robert studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. 20 minutes. Caleb will cover your section." Maya walked to the employee locker area, a cramped room lined with metal lockers and a single wooden bench scarred with initials and coffee stains. She sat down heavily, finally allowing herself to feel the full weight of what had just happened. Her phone was in her locker. She pulled it out, seeing 3 missed calls from her mother and a text from the babysitter. "Emma asking for you." All good, though. There was a photo attached, her daughter at the kitchen table, gap-toothed smile wide, holding up a drawing of what might be a horse or possibly a dog. Emma was 5 now, starting kindergarten in the fall, obsessed with animals and Frozen and asking questions Maya couldn't always answer. Questions like, "Why don't I have a daddy?" Maya had practiced answers, had read books about single parenting, about how to address these questions with age-appropriate honesty. But she'd never found words that felt right, that didn't taste like lies or half-truths or the bitter residue of her own shame. The employee door opened and Jessica appeared. One of the other servers, early 30s, bleached blonde hair, always pulled back in an immaculate French twist. "Girl, what the hell happened out there?" "Everyone's losing their minds." "It's nothing. It's not nothing. David Harrington is out there laughing it off, but his whole table is uncomfortable, and Robert looks like he's about to have an aneurysm. Did he say something to you?" Maya looked at Jessica, calculating. They'd worked together for 4 years, had covered each other's shifts, had complained about rude customers over after-shift drinks at McGillicuddy's down the block. But they weren't friends, not really. Weren't close enough for this. He was just being difficult, Maya said carefully. Some customers are like that. Jessica's eyes narrowed slightly. She wasn't stupid. Okay, well, Caleb's got your tables now. You want me to bring you anything? No, I'm fine. Beam. When Jessica left, Maya sat in the silence of the locker room, surrounded by the smell of industrial detergent and the faint sound of the kitchen beyond. She thought about the documents she'd signed 6 years ago, locked in a safety deposit box at the Chase Bank on Ashland. She'd read them more carefully last year, after her business loan came through, after she'd started taking night classes in hospitality management, after she'd begun to imagine a future that wasn't just survival. The agreement had been clear. She would receive financial support for 5 years in exchange for complete non-disclosure. She would not contact David Harrington or his family. She would not identify him as Emma's father. She would not make any claims for additional support beyond what was outlined. Violation of these terms would result in immediate cessation of payments and legal action to recover all funds previously distributed. The payments had ended 8 months ago, the 5-year term complete. Maya had received a final certified letter from Harrington's attorney. Per the agreement dated March 15, 2019, all financial obligations have been fulfilled. This matter is considered closed. So technically she was no longer bound. Technically she could walk back into that dining room and tell everyone exactly who David Harrington was, what he'd done, how he'd paid for her silence and was now playing games with her livelihood, but technically didn't account for reality. Didn't account for the fact that she had no proof Emma was his daughter beyond her own word, that the DNA test she'd offered to take had been refused through his lawyer. Our client declines to engage in unsubstantiated claims. That she had signed documents accepting payment in exchange for silence, which any decent lawyer could twist into extortion or blackmail. Didn't account for the fact that she still needed this job, still needed to pay rent, still needed to provide for her daughter. Maya stood up, smoothing her black server's apron, checking her reflection in the small mirror taped to the inside of her locker door. Her dark hair was pulled back in a low bun, minimal makeup, small gold earrings, professional, invisible, exactly what luxury dining demanded. She looked the same as she had an hour ago, before David Harrington had walked into her section and turned her carefully maintained life into something precarious. She walked back toward the kitchen, stopping just before the swinging doors to the dining room. Through the small circular window, she could see table 12. Harrington was laughing now, animated, telling some story that had his companions leaning in. Caleb, young and eager and desperate to impress, was serving their entrees with the kind of attentive deference the Celestine prided itself on. Nobody in that dining room was thinking about the waitress who'd been replaced. The moment had passed. Harrington had won, the way men like him always won, by reframing the narrative, by controlling the story, by ensuring that any version of events that emerged would be the one he wanted people to hear. Maya pushed through the doors and returned to her remaining tables, offering apologies for the brief absence, refreshing drinks, ensuring dessert menus were presented at precisely the right moment. She moved through the rest of her shift with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd learned to separate feeling from function. At 11:47 p.m. she clocked out. Her feet ached, her back was tight, and she had $340 in tips. A decent night, enough to cover this week's grocery bill and put a little toward Emma's upcoming dental appointment. She walked to the bus stop 3 blocks away, the February wind cutting through her coat, downtown Chicago bright and indifferent around her. The red line would take her north to Rogers Park, where she shared a 2-bedroom apartment with her mother and daughter, where the radiator clanked and the neighbors upstairs fought at 2 a.m. and the rent had gone up $150 this year. On the bus, surrounded by the late-night mixture of service workers and club-goers and people with nowhere else to be, Maya stared at her reflection in the dark window and wondered what would happen If she'd spoken, if she'd looked David Harrington in the eye and said, "You know exactly who I am." If she'd told the truth in front of witnesses, in front of cameras, in front of a room full of people who could spread her story across social media before Harrington's lawyers could even draft a cease and desist. But she hadn't. She'd stayed silent. She'd protected him, protected herself, protected the delicate balance that kept Emma fed and housed and safe. And as the bus rumbled north through the city, carrying her back to her real life, Maya understood with perfect clarity that David Harrington had known exactly what he was doing, had calculated the odds and found them comfortably in his favor, had gambled on her silence and won. The question that kept her awake that night, staring at the ceiling of her bedroom while Emma slept peacefully in the next room, was simple. How much longer could she afford to keep losing? Maya's mother was awake when she got home, sitting at the kitchen table with a crossword puzzle and chamomile tea. Gloria Rodriguez was 56, with grey streaking through her black hair and arthritis settling into her hands. But her eyes were still sharp, still capable of seeing through whatever facade her daughter tried to maintain. "Late night," Gloria said, not looking up from her puzzle. "Tuesdays are slow. We don't usually cut people early." Maya dropped her bag by the door, kicked off her shoes, felt the immediate relief of pressure leaving her feet. How was Emma? Perfect, like always. Ate all her dinner, practiced her letters, went down at 8:30. Now Gloria did look up, studying her daughter's face. Something happened. It wasn't a question. Maya moved to the refrigerator, pulling out leftover rice and chicken, something to eat even though her stomach felt tight and uncertain. Just a difficult customer. What kind of difficult? The kind that doesn't matter. The kind you smile through and forget about. Gloria made a small sound. Not quite agreement, not quite skepticism. She'd been a housekeeper for 32 years, cleaning vacation homes in Lake Forest for families who barely acknowledged her existence. She understood difficult customers. She also understood when her daughter was lying. Maya heated her food in silence, the microwave humming in the quiet apartment. It was past midnight now, Wednesday morning technically, and the building had settled into its nighttime sounds. Footsteps above, traffic outside, the ancient pipes groaning through the walls. When she sat down across from her mother, Gloria said, "You heard from that lawyer again?" "No, why would I?" "I don't know. You've got that look, like you're carrying something heavy." Maya ate mechanically, tasting nothing. The lawyer, Marcus Webb, representing David Harrington, had been her primary point of contact for 5 years. Professional, efficient, completely impersonal. Monthly payments had arrived with automated precision, $800 for Emma's expenses, routed through a trust that left no direct connection to Harrington's name. The arrangement had been presented as generous, practical, in everyone's best interest. Maya had known it was hush money, had known and taken it anyway, because $800 a month meant Emma could have decent clothes, healthy food, the speech therapy that had helped her overcome an early articulation delay, had meant Gloria could cut back on her cleaning jobs when her joints got bad, had meant survival. "He was there tonight," Maya heard herself say, "at the restaurant. David." Gloria's hand froze, her pen suspended above the crossword. "He came to see you." "No. He had a reservation, business dinner." "He didn't. He didn't come to see me. I was just his server." "Did he say anything?" Maya thought about the exact wording of his threat, delivered in that low voice meant only for her ears. "Say nothing, and I'll leave right now. Make a scene, and you'll never work in this city again." "He didn't acknowledge knowing me," she said instead, "made a joke that embarrassed me in front of the whole dining room, then requested a different server." Gloria set down her pen, the crossword forgotten. "Baby, you need to be careful. I didn't do anything." I know you didn't, but men like that, they don't just show up places accidentally. He knew you worked there. He chose to come in anyway. That's a message. Maya looked at her mother, this woman who'd raised her alone after her father left, who'd worked double shifts to keep them housed, who'd taught her that survival meant swallowing pride and keeping your head down and not making trouble for people who had the power to destroy you. What's the message? Maya asked, though she already knew. That he can go anywhere he wants, do anything he wants, and you're the one who has to adjust. It was true. David Harrington moved through the world with the frictionless ease of the truly wealthy. Doors opened, tables appeared, rules bent. He belonged to 3 private clubs, sat on 4 corporate boards, had his name on a children's hospital wing. His wife, Catherine Harrington, came from old Chicago money, the kind that predated the fire, the kind that appeared in society pages and charity galas and carefully curated Instagram posts about family legacy. Maya had Googled Catherine once, late at night, hating herself even as she typed. Had found photos from fundraisers, vacation homes in Aspen and Martha's Vineyard, 3 children who went to Latin school and played lacrosse and wore clothes that cost more than Maya's monthly rent. Catherine was beautiful in that specific wealthy way, effortlessly thin, expertly maintained, radiating the confidence of someone who'd never had to worry about next month's electricity bill. David had mentioned her occasionally during their affair. "Catherine and I have an understanding," he'd said, as though that explained everything, as though it made their hotel meetings noble instead of sordid. "Our marriage is complicated. You wouldn't understand." He'd been right. She hadn't understood. She'd been 22, working double shifts at a coffee shop, taking night classes toward a hospitality degree she couldn't afford to finish. He'd been 47, successful, charming, attentive in ways that felt like being seen for the first time in her life. When he'd touched her, when he'd promised her things would change, she'd wanted to believe it so badly that she'd ignored every warning sign. And when she'd gotten pregnant, when she'd told him with shaking hands and tears in her eyes, he'd looked at her with something close to pity and said, "I'll take care of this, don't worry." She'd thought he meant he'd leave his wife. He'd meant he'd pay for an abortion. When she'd refused, when she'd insisted she wanted to keep the baby, his expression had shifted, the warmth draining out, replaced by something cold and calculating. "Then we need to be smart about this," he'd said. "For everyone's sake." Smart had meant lawyers, had meant non-disclosure agreements, had meant money in exchange for silence, structured in a way that protected him completely while giving her just enough to survive. Maya pushed her half-eaten food away, her appetite gone. "I need this job, Mom. I know. If I make trouble, if I say anything, they'll fire me. Robert's decent, but he's not going to choose me over a billionaire regular, and I've got the loan for the food truck, and Emma's starting school, and—" "I know," Gloria repeated, reaching across the table to cover Maya's hand with her own. Her fingers were warm, rough, from years of cleaning solution and hard work. "I know, baby. I'm not saying you should do anything. I'm just saying be careful. Men like David Harrington, they're dangerous when they feel threatened." "I'm not threatening him. I didn't say anything." "You didn't say anything tonight, but he doesn't know if you'll keep being quiet. That's what scares him. That's why he showed up, why he played his little game. He's testing you." Maya felt something cold settle in her chest. "Testing me for what? To see if you'll break? To see if the agreement still holds, even though the payment stopped?" Gloria squeezed her hand. "He's reminding you what you have to lose." They sat in the kitchen's harsh fluorescent light, mother and daughter, both veterans of survival, in a city that chewed up people without money or power or connections. Outside, a siren wailed past, heading north. Somewhere above them, the upstairs neighbors were fighting again, voices rising and falling through the ceiling. "I'm tired," Maya said finally. "Then sleep. Tomorrow's a new day." But lying in bed 20 minutes later, staring at her ceiling, Maya knew tomorrow wouldn't be new. It would be the same careful negotiation it always was, balancing Emma's needs against her own limitations, stretching every dollar, making compromises that tasted like defeat. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from Jessica. "You okay? Heard Harrington left you a $5,000 tip. WTF?" Maya sat up, her heart suddenly pounding. She opened her banking app, checking her tip pool from tonight's shift. The deposits usually processed around 1 a.m. There it was, $340. She stared at the number, trying to make sense of it. Her legitimate tips had been $340, which meant the extra $5,000 had come from David Harrington's table, had been left on his check, had been processed through the system and deposited into her account. Another message from Jessica. "Robert is freaking out, says it's against policy for one server to get tipped on another server's table. Caleb is pissed." Maya's hands were shaking. This wasn't generosity. This was something else entirely, another move in whatever game Harrington was playing. He'd humiliated her, had her removed from his table, then left an absurdly large tip that would generate questions, attention, exactly the kind of scrutiny she couldn't afford. And if she kept the money, she'd be accepting his latest payment for silence. If she refused it, she'd be making a statement that could cost her job. Her phone rang, Robert's number. She let it go to voicemail, her mind racing through possibilities, through consequences, through all the ways this could go wrong. The voicemail notification appeared. She listened, Robert's voice tight with forced calm. "Maya, we need to talk about tonight. Call me when you get this, regardless of the time. This is important." She didn't call back. Instead, she got out of bed, moving quietly so she wouldn't wake Emma, and went to the living room. Her laptop was old, slow to boot up, but eventually the screen glowed to life. She logged into the Chase Bank portal, navigating to the safety deposit box documents she'd scanned for her records, the non-disclosure agreement. Pages of legal language, most of which she barely understood even now, but certain phrases stood out, highlighted in yellow from when she'd reviewed them last year. The recipient agrees to maintain absolute confidentiality regarding the nature and existence of this agreement and the relationship between the parties. Any breach of confidentiality will result in immediate legal action and financial liability for all payments received, plus damages and legal fees. This agreement remains binding in perpetuity, regardless of payment status or term expiration. In perpetuity, forever. The payments might have stopped, but the silence was supposed to continue indefinitely. Maya pulled up her email, searching for Marcus Webb's contact information. She'd never initiated contact before. All communication had flowed one direction, from him to her. But she had his email, his office number, the professional signature at the bottom of every message. Marcus Webb, partner, Whitmore and Associates, attorneys at law. She started typing, "Mr. Webb. David Harrington came to my place of employment tonight and..." She stopped, deleting the words, trying again. "Mr. Webb, I need to clarify the terms of our agreement regarding..." Delete. This was wrong. All of it was wrong. Reaching out to Harrington's lawyer would only make things worse, would give them evidence that she was thinking about breaking silence, that she was questioning the arrangement. She closed the laptop, returning to bed, but sleep wouldn't come. Her mind kept circling back to Harrington's face across that dining room table, the casual cruelty in his smile, the absolute confidence that she would do exactly what she'd done. Stay quiet, accept whatever he chose to do. Continue being invisible. At 3 a.m., Emma appeared in her doorway, small and sleepy, dragging her favorite stuffed elephant. "Mama, can't sleep." Maya lifted her blanket, making room. Emma climbed in, burrowing close, her small body warm and trusting. This was what mattered. This child, this life they'd built, this precarious stability that kept them safe. "Love you, Mama," Emma mumbled, already drifting back to sleep. Love you too, baby. Maya held her daughter in the darkness, listening to her breathe, and made a decision. She would call Robert in the morning. She would explain that there had been a misunderstanding with the tip, that it needed to be returned to Mr. Harrington, that she couldn't accept it. She would be professional, apologetic, invisible. She would stay quiet. She would keep losing. But as dawn began to grey the windows, as Emma slept peacefully against her side, Maya felt something shift inside her, small and sharp and dangerous. A question she'd never allowed herself to ask before. What if she stopped making it easy for him? Robert called 3 more times before Maya answered at 7 a.m. Emma was eating cereal at the kitchen table, still in her pajamas, explaining an elaborate story about the elephants at Lincoln Park Zoo to her grandmother. Gloria shot Maya a concerned look as she retreated to her bedroom to take the call. Maya, finally. Robert sounded exhausted, which made sense. He'd probably been dealing with this situation all night. We have a problem. The tip, I know, I'll refuse it. It's not that simple. Harrington's lawyer called the restaurant at 6 a.m. Apparently, the tip was meant to be split among the entire waitstaff. 5,000 divided among all 7 servers on shift last night. A gesture of appreciation for the excellent service. Maya sat on her bed, processing this. That's not how it was processed. No, because he specifically requested it go to server number 47, which is you. But now his lawyer is saying there was an error in communication, that Mr. Harrington is extremely disappointed, that his intention to reward the entire team was misunderstood, and that the tip needs to be redistributed immediately. So redistribute it. Maya, if we do that, you keep $700 instead of $5,000. Caleb is already threatening to file a complaint about the original processing. Jessica is furious. The other servers are demanding to know why you got special treatment in the first place. Robert paused. And I need to know if there's something going on between you and David Harrington. The question hung there, heavy and unavoidable. Maya could lie, could say no, could maintain the fiction, could let Robert redistribute the money and move on with her life. Instead, she heard herself say, "Can I come in early? I'd rather have this conversation in person." Silence. Then, "My office, 2 p.m., before your shift." Maya spent the morning in careful preparation. She dressed in her most professional clothes, black slacks, a pressed white blouse, minimal jewelry. She printed out copies of her bank statements from the past 6 years, highlighting the monthly deposits. She pulled up the non-disclosure agreement on her phone, making notes on specific clauses. She was methodical, precise, treating this like what it was, a negotiation where she held almost no power but needed to find some anyway. Gloria watched her work at the kitchen table, saying nothing, understanding everything. "You're going to tell him," she finally said. "I'm going to tell him enough." Maya looked at her mother. "I can't keep doing this. He's going to keep pushing, keep testing, keep finding ways to remind me that he owns my silence. If I don't establish some kind of boundary now, this will never stop." "Baby, these people, they have lawyers, they have money. They can make your life very difficult." "My life is already difficult." Maya gathered her papers, sliding them into a folder. "I'm just choosing which kind of difficult I can live with." The Celestine looked different in daylight. Less glamorous, more utilitarian. The dining room was empty, tables stripped to bare wood, waiting for the evening setup. Maya found Robert in his office. A cramped space behind the kitchen filled with schedules and invoices and the perpetual smell of coffee. He gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Talk to me." Maya sat, placing her folder on her lap, but not opening it yet. "How much do you know about David Harrington's personal life?" "I know he's married, 3 kids, successful businessman, regular donor to a dozen charities, sits on the board at Northwestern." Robert leaned back in his chair, studying her. I also know he's the kind of client restaurants like ours want to keep happy. He brings in other high-profile guests, he tips well, he's never been anything but polite. A pause. Until last night. He was polite last night too, to everyone except me. So what happened? Maya opened her folder, pulling out a bank statement. She slid it across the desk. These deposits, every month for 5 years, $800, from a trust administered by Marcus Webb at Whitmore and Associates. Robert's eyes scanned the page. I don't understand. David Harrington is my daughter's father. 6 years ago, we had an affair. I got pregnant. He paid me to stay quiet. She said it flatly, without emotion, watching Robert's face shift through surprise, confusion, calculation. The payments ended 8 months ago when the agreed-upon term expired. Last night was the first time I've seen him since I was 4 months pregnant. Robert removed his glasses, cleaning them with meticulous care, his tell. Jesus, Maya. He threatened me, told me if I said anything, if I made a scene, I'd never work in this city again. Then he turned his threat into a joke, so the whole dining room heard him challenge me to speak. When I stayed quiet, he requested a different server and left a $5,000 tip specifically designated to me. Now his lawyer is claiming it was a mistake, that it should have been split among all staff. She pulled out another document, a printed email. This is the original payment processing receipt. It clearly shows he specified server 47, my number. No mistake. Why are you telling me this? Because he's playing games with my livelihood. Because he's using this restaurant as his personal power trip. Because I need you to understand that if I'd spoken last night, if I'd told that dining room who he really is, I could lose everything. My job, my credibility. Possibly even my daughter, if he decides to use his lawyers to paint me as an extortionist or a blackmailer. Robert put his glasses back on, his expression unreadable. What do you want from me? I want to keep my job. I want to split the tip equally with the other servers, the way his lawyer is claiming he intended. And I want David Harrington permanently removed from my section if he ever comes back to this restaurant. Maya, I can't ban a customer because of a personal relationship. I'm not asking you to ban him. I'm asking you to not make me serve him. Put him in any other section. Tell him it's our policy to rotate VIP guests among senior servers. Tell him whatever you need to tell him. But don't make me stand at his table and smile while he plays games with my life. Robert was quiet for a long time, his fingers drumming against his desk. Maya waited, her heart pounding, knowing this was the moment everything could unravel. Robert could fire her, could decide she was too much liability, too much drama, not worth the trouble. The Celestine prided itself on discretion, on seamless service, on never making wealthy clients uncomfortable. Finally, Robert said, I need to make a phone call. Wait here. He left the office. Maya sat in the silence, surrounded by the administrative detritus of running a high-end restaurant, and tried to keep breathing. Through the closed door, she could hear kitchen prep beginning, the clash of pans, the murmur of Spanish and English mixing together, the familiar sounds of her work world preparing for another night. Robert returned 15 minutes later, his expression carefully neutral. I spoke with ownership, explained the situation in general terms, that there's a history between you and a regular client, that it's creating workplace tension, that we need to manage the situation professionally. Maya's throat felt tight. And they don't want legal trouble. They especially don't want the kind of publicity that comes with sexual harassment or hush money allegations, true or not. Robert sat down, meeting her eyes directly. You'll split the tip evenly. Moving forward, if David Harrington makes a reservation, he'll be seated in a section that's not yours. If he specifically requests you as his server, we'll politely explain that you're unavailable and offer someone else. If he pushes the issue, management will handle it directly. Relief flooded through her, so intense it was almost dizzying. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet." Robert's voice was firm. "This protection only works if you maintain your end. No confrontations, no scenes. If he comes in and you happen to pass his table, you're professional and polite. You don't engage, but you don't provoke. Understood?" "Understood." "And Maya, if this becomes a bigger problem, if his lawyers get involved, if this affects the restaurant's reputation in any way, I can't protect you." The owners were very clear about that. She nodded, understanding the fragile nature of what she'd just been offered. It wasn't safety. It was a temporary reprieve, a small buffer. Better than nothing, but far from enough. That night, Maya worked her shift with renewed focus. She split the tip evenly among the other servers, weathering their resentment and curiosity with polite deflection. She served her tables impeccably. She smiled at the right moments, disappeared at the right moments, maintained the invisible efficiency that luxury dining required. At 10 p.m., David Harrington walked in. Maya saw him from across the dining room. Same confident stride, same expensive suit, alone this time. Robert intercepted him immediately, greeting him with professional warmth, guiding him to table 6, Jessica's section. Harrington's eyes scanned the room until they found Maya. He held her gaze for just a moment, his expression unreadable. Then he smiled, small, private, satisfied, and turned his attention to Jessica, who was already approaching with menus and water. Maya forced herself to focus on her own tables, but she tracked his presence with peripheral awareness. Watched him order wine, an appetizer, an entree, watched him eat slowly, leisurely, as though he had all the time in the world, as though this were any normal Tuesday. When he left an hour later, he paused near the host stand, speaking briefly with Robert. Maya was too far away to hear the conversation, but she saw Robert nod, saw Harrington hand him something, a business card. Perhaps, before heading toward the exit, he walked past Maya's station without looking at her. After he left, Robert appeared at her side. "He said to tell you he appreciated the excellent service last night, said he hopes there are no hard feelings about the confusion with the tip." Maya's hands tightened on the water pitcher she was holding. "That's all. That's all." Robert's voice was careful. He also said he's looking forward to his next visit. It wasn't over. It would never be over, not really. David Harrington had been reminded that she still existed, that she still worked here, that she still represented a potential risk to his carefully maintained life, and he was letting her know in his subtle way that he hadn't forgotten, that he was watching, that he could walk into her workplace whenever he wanted, and there was nothing she could do about it. Maya finished her shift, collected her tips, took the Red Line home. Emma was asleep, curled around her elephant. Gloria was in bed, the apartment quiet and dark. Maya stood in her daughter's doorway, watching her breathe, and felt the full weight of everything she was trying to protect. She pulled out her phone, searching for the Northwestern Hospital wing that bore David Harrington's name. Found photos from the dedication ceremony, Harrington and his wife cutting a ribbon, surrounded by hospital administrators, their 3 children standing proud and polished in the background. The plaque read, "The Harrington Family Pediatric Wing, dedicated to the health and well-being of all children, except the one he'd paid to never acknowledge." Maya closed the browser, but she didn't put her phone away. Instead, she opened her contacts, scrolling to a number she hadn't called in 2 years. Alicia Park, a woman she'd met at a single-parent support group when Emma was 3. Alicia was a legal aid attorney who'd given Maya her card with the instruction, "If you ever need help, call me. What you're going through with that NDA, it's not right." Maya had never called, had been too afraid, too convinced that there was nothing anyone could do, that fighting meant losing everything. But now, staring at that hospital photo, At David Harrington's perfect family and perfect reputation built on money and silence, Maya felt that small, sharp thing inside her grow teeth. She typed a message. Alicia, this is Maya Rodriguez. We met at the parents' group 2 years ago. You said to call if I needed help with a legal matter. Are you still at legal aid? I think I might need to talk to someone. She stared at the message for a long time before hitting send. Once it was gone, once those words were out in the world, there would be no taking them back. This would become real, become a choice she'd made rather than something happening to her. The response came surprisingly fast. Maya, yes, still here. Can you come in tomorrow? I have a slot at 11 a.m. Maya wrote back, I'll be there. Then she turned off her phone, climbed into bed, and lay in the darkness thinking about all the ways this could go wrong, and the single fragile possibility that it might go right. The legal aid office was in Uptown, a third-floor walk-up, above a convenience store. The waiting room smelled like coffee and photocopier toner, the chairs were mismatched donations, and the receptionist sat behind a desk salvaged from someone's garage sale. It was the furthest thing from Marcus Webb's pristine law office in the Loop, where Maya had signed her agreement 6 years ago. Alicia Park appeared exactly on time, 34 years old, Korean-American, wearing slacks and a cardigan that had seen better days. Maya, come on back. Her office was barely bigger than a closet, dominated by a metal desk piled with case files. Alicia cleared a chair, gesturing for Maya to sit. I'm glad you reached out. Tell me everything. Maya talked for 45 minutes straight. She explained the affair, the pregnancy, the lawyer, the agreement, the payments. She showed Alicia the documents she'd brought, the bank statements, the email traffic. She described last Tuesday night, Harrington's threat disguised as a joke, the tip, the games. When she finished, Alicia sat back, her expression thoughtful. Okay. First question, what do you want from this? I don't know. I just want it to stop. I want him to leave me alone. Do you want child support? Maya had thought about this question 1,000 times. I don't know if I can prove he's Emma's father. We'd need a DNA test, and he'd fight that. It could take years. It could, Alicia agreed. But Maya, you need to understand something. That agreement you signed, there are some serious problems with it from a legal standpoint. You can't sign away a child's right to support from their father. The courts have consistently ruled that these types of NDAs are unenforceable when they interfere with a child's welfare. Maya felt something crack open in her chest. Hope, maybe, or terror. But I took the money. His lawyer could say I was paid. $800 a month for 5 years is $48,000. Illinois child support guidelines for someone of Harrington's income would likely run closer to $3,000 a month. You weren't paid. You were bought off cheap. Alicia leaned forward. The question is, are you willing to fight this? Because if you are, I think we have a case. But it's going to be brutal. Harrington's lawyers will come at you with everything they have. They'll try to paint you as a gold digger, an extortionist, someone who waited until she could maximize publicity to make her move. Your life will be scrutinized, your history will be examined, and there are no guarantees we'll win. What if I don't want child support? What if I just want the NDA voided so he can't threaten me anymore? Alicia smiled, sad and knowing. Honey, if you void the NDA, you're opening the door for him to publicly acknowledge or deny Emma. If he denies paternity, you'll have to prove it, which means DNA testing, which means family court. You can't have it both ways. Either you're bound by silence or you're willing to go public. There's no middle ground. Maya looked at the stained carpet, the scuffed walls, the metal filing cabinets. This office couldn't compete with Whitmore and Associates. Alicia was one overworked attorney with too many cases and not enough resources. David Harrington had a fleet of lawyers whose sole job was protecting his interests. I have a daughter to protect, Maya said quietly. If this goes public, if it gets messy, she's the one who'll suffer. Kids are cruel. She'll be the girl whose mom had an affair with a married billionaire, the girl whose dad didn't want her. Kids are resilient too, Alicia said gently. And right now, you're teaching Emma that silence is the price of survival. Is that really what you want her to learn? The question hit like a physical blow. Maya thought about Emma at the kitchen table, drawing pictures, asking questions, trusting that her mother would always protect her. What would happen when Emma got older, started asking harder questions, started understanding that her father wasn't absent? He was actively choosing to pretend she didn't exist. What would happen when Emma learned her mother had accepted that choice, had signed documents agreeing to it, had taken money to make it permanent? I need to think about this, Maya said. Take your time. But Maya, Alicia handed her a business card. If you decide to fight, I'm here. And you should know, you're not the first woman to sit in this office with a story like this. Powerful men, pregnant mistresses, NDAs that shouldn't be legal. It's a pattern, and the only reason it keeps working is because women like you stay quiet. Maya took the card, feeling its weight like an accusation. She went to work that night, served tables, smiled on cue. David Harrington didn't appear, but Marcus Webb did, walking into the restaurant at 8 p.m. with the kind of confidence that came from never being challenged. He was seated in Jessica's section, a courtesy, probably, or a message. Maya watched him order, eat, pay his check. As he left, he paused at her station. "Ms. Rodriguez, a moment?" Robert appeared immediately, protective. "Sir, can I help you with something?" Webb smiled, professional and cold. "Just wanted to let Ms. Rodriguez know that my client has expressed concern about some recent communications. He's hoping we can all maintain the professional boundaries we established some years ago, for everyone's benefit." "I haven't contacted your client," Maya said evenly. "Of course not. I'm sure it was just a misunderstanding. But should you decide to reconsider the agreement we have in place, I'd advise you to think very carefully about the consequences. Not just legal consequences, but practical ones. Employment, housing, credit. These things can become complicated very quickly when litigation gets involved." It was a threat, delivered in careful lawyer language, impossible to prove, but perfectly clear. Robert stepped between them, his voice professionally firm. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave now. We don't conduct business discussions in the dining room." Webb nodded, unruffled. "Of course. Good evening." He left his card on the table. Thick stock, expensive printing, a reminder of what she was up against. After her shift, Maya sat on the red line heading north and made a decision. She pulled out her phone, calling Alicia's number. "Maya, it's late. You okay?" "I want to file for child support. I want to void the NDA. I want my daughter to know her father is alive and capable of supporting her, even if he chooses not to." The words came fast, certain, "and I want to do it publicly. I want people to know what he did." Silence. Then, "Are you sure? Once we start this, there's no going back." "I'm sure." And she was. The fear was still there, the terror of losing everything, but beneath it was something stronger. The bone-deep certainty that continuing to be silent would cost her more than speaking ever could. "Okay," Alicia said, "let's get to work." The case took 3 months to prepare. Alicia connected Maya with other attorneys, building a team. They filed a petition to establish paternity and child support in Cook County Family Court. They notified Marcus Webb, who responded with exactly the scorched earth tactics Alicia had predicted: motions to dismiss, allegations of extortion, character assassination disguised as legal argument. The story broke in the Chicago Tribune on a Thursday in May. Billionaire developer David Harrington named in paternity suit, accusations of illegal NDA. Maya woke up to 47 missed calls, hundreds of texts, and reporters camped outside her apartment building. Gloria shielded Emma from the chaos, taking her to a friend's house while Maya faced the cameras with Alicia by her side. "My client is seeking what any parent would seek, support for her child from both parents," Alicia said calmly. "The fact that one parent is a billionaire shouldn't change that basic right." The backlash was immediate and brutal. David Harrington's PR team released a statement expressing sadness and confusion over the allegations, painting Maya as an opportunist who'd waited years to make her claim. Conservative websites called her a gold digger. Progressive ones debated whether her NDA was victim or complicity. Social media exploded with opinions, none of which knew the full story, all of which felt entitled to judge. Maya lost her job at the Celestine. Robert called personally, apologetic but firm. "The owners feel the publicity is incompatible with our brand. I'm sorry, Maya, truly." She'd expected it, had prepared for it. Alicia had connected her with a server position at a casual restaurant in Rogers Park. Less money, less prestige, but willing to hire someone whose name was currently trending on Twitter. The DNA test, court-ordered after 6 weeks of legal wrangling, came back 97% probability of paternity. David Harrington was Emma's father. Legally, scientifically, undeniably. His lawyers shifted tactics. Now they argued that Maya had been compensated, that she'd signed a valid agreement, that reopening the matter was harassment. They filed a countersuit for defamation, for breach of contract, for everything their expensive educations could imagine. But something unexpected happened. Other women started coming forward. Not to the court, most were still bound by their own NDAs, but to journalists, to advocacy groups, to each other. A pattern emerged. David Harrington had affairs with young women in service positions, got them pregnant, paid them to disappear. Maya was at least the 4th woman this had happened to. The story evolved. It wasn't about one desperate single mother anymore. It was about systemic abuse of power, about NDAs being weaponized against the vulnerable, about wealthy men buying silence as casually as they bought cars. In August, Catherine Harrington filed for divorce. In September, Northwestern Hospital quietly removed David Harrington from their board and renamed the Pediatric Wing. In October, the family court judge ruled that the NDA was void, that Emma was entitled to child support consistent with Harrington's income, $200 per month, retroactive to birth, and that Maya had acted within her rights as a parent. The legal fees ate most of the retroactive payment. But the monthly support meant stability, meant Emma could go to a better school, meant Maya could finally finish her hospitality degree, meant Gloria could retire from cleaning houses. It meant surviving without having to stay quiet. Maya and Emma never met David Harrington. He paid his court-ordered support through an automated system, acknowledged paternity on paper but maintained no contact, remarried within a year to a woman closer to his own age. Emma was 6 when she finally asked the question directly, "Why doesn't my daddy want to see me?" Maya had prepared for this, had practiced answers with her therapist. But sitting on Emma's bed, looking at her daughter's 2 perceptive eyes, all the practiced words felt hollow. "Some people aren't very good at being parents," she said finally. "It's not about you. It's never about you. You are wonderful and smart and deserving of love. His inability to see that is his failure, not yours. Do you think he'll ever want to meet me?" "I don't know, baby. Maybe someday, but we can't wait for that. We have to build our life with the people who do want to be here." Emma thought about this, processing. Like Grandma, and like all the people who love you exactly as you are. It wasn't a perfect answer. It didn't erase the loss or the questions or the reality that Emma would always carry the knowledge that her father had chosen not to know her. But it was honest, it was true, and it was the best Maya could offer. 5 years later, when Emma was 11, Maya opened her food truck, a dream she'd been building towards since before Emma was born. She called it Gloria's Kitchen, after her mother, who taught her that survival was a skill, but thriving was a choice. The opening day was June 14th, a Saturday, downtown Chicago, bright and hot and crowded. Emma worked the register, Gloria supervised from a folding chair in the shade, and Maya cooked the recipes she'd perfected over years of careful practice. At 2 p.m., a black town car pulled up. David Harrington emerged, older now, grayer, wearing expensive casual clothes that somehow looked wrong on him. He approached the truck, and for a moment, Maya felt the old fear try to rise. Then she looked at Emma, confident, chattering with customers, wearing the custom apron Maya had made her, and the fear dissolved into something else entirely. Not forgiveness, not even anger anymore, just indifference. "Can I help you?" Maya asked. The way she'd ask any customer. Harrington looked at the menu board, at the truck, at Maya. "I heard about your business. Thought I'd come by. What can I get you?" He ordered a Cuban sandwich, paid in cash, took his food to a nearby bench. He ate slowly, methodically, watching the flow of customers, watching Emma laugh with a group of teenage girls ordering smoothies. When he finished, he threw away his trash and approached the truck one more time. "She's beautiful," he said quietly. Maya looked at him, this man who'd occupied so much space in her life, who'd caused so much pain, who'd ultimately taught her that silence cost more than speaking ever could. "Yes," she said, "she is. He stopped, started again. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I see what you built. For her, for yourself. It's impressive." Maya nodded, acknowledging the words without accepting them as absolution. "Will that be all?" Something in his face shifted. Recognition, maybe, that he'd lost whatever power he'd once held over her. "Yes, that's all." He left. Maya never saw him again. But she thought about that moment sometimes, in the years that followed, thought about how different it felt to stand in her own business, on her own terms, and meet his eyes with nothing to hide. How much lighter the world felt when you stopped carrying other people's shame. Emma graduated from high school with honors, got a scholarship to study social work, told her mother she wanted to help other kids like her, kids whose parents were complicated, whose families didn't fit the template, who needed someone to tell them they were worth fighting for. "Is that because of our story?" Maya asked. "Maybe," Emma said. "Or maybe it's because you taught me that speaking up is scary, but staying silent is scarier. That you can't control how people react to the truth, but you can control whether you're willing to live with lies." Maya thought about that too, about the choice she'd made in a cramped legal aid office, terrified and uncertain, but ultimately unwilling to teach her daughter that silence was survival's only price. "I'm proud of you," she told Emma. "You know that, right?" "I know, Mom." "I'm proud of you too." They were standing in the kitchen of Maya's apartment, a bigger place now, in a better neighborhood, with a working radiator and neighbors who didn't fight at 2 a.m. Gloria was in the living room, laughing at something on TV. The food truck business had grown into 2 trucks, then a small restaurant. Maya had her degree, her independence, her peace, not a perfect life. Not without scars or questions or moments of doubt, but a life built on truth rather than silence, on choices rather than surrender. And on a Saturday morning in November, when Maya opened her restaurant and saw the line of customers waiting, regular folks, families, couples, students, people who came for the food and stayed for the warmth, she thought about that night at the Celestine restaurant, when David Harrington had challenged her to speak and she'd chosen silence. She thought about all the ways that silence had cost her, and all the ways speaking had saved her. And she thought about the moment she'd stopped losing and started choosing what she was willing to fight for. The restaurant filled with voices, with laughter, with the clatter of plates and the smell of cooking. Maya moved through her kitchen with practiced efficiency, Gloria greeting regulars at the door, Emma helping during her college breaks, all three generations working together to build something that couldn't be bought or silenced or taken away. Outside, Chicago stretched in all directions, the same city where she'd once survived on tips and terror, where she'd signed away her voice for survival, where she'd learned the difference between being quiet and being silenced. The same city where she'd finally learned that the most powerful thing she'd ever said was the truth, even when it cost her everything she thought she needed to keep. Especially then, because some things, dignity, honesty, the ability to meet your daughter's eyes without shame, those things were worth more than any amount of money, any promise of stability, any billionaire's carefully maintained silence. Maya had learned that lesson the hard way, but she'd learned it. And that, she thought, watching her family and customers and the life she'd built from the ruins of her silence, was the only thing that had ever really mattered.